Hey y'all, hey, are you getting ready to move? Well, listen, I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to, because over the course of like the last 15 or 20 years, I've moved 10 plus times. And this includes both long haul moves and short distance moves and local moves. I've moved a lot, y'all. So I already have 2 videos up where I talk about doing a long haul move, and this is where I moved from Texas to New Jersey. One of those videos has tips about hiring a moving company to move you across country, and then the other one is a DIY, doing it yourself on a budget. I put the links to both those videos below, so go ahead and check those out. But in this video, we're doing a local move. So I'm sharing all the tips you need to know to do a local, or often referred to as a short distance move. And once again, y'all, I've done this a lot. I've made all the mistakes, and I'm hopeful that this video just saves you money, it saves you time, and it saves you headaches. In this video, I'm going to share the 3 different ways that I've done a short distance move, also referred to as a local move. Now keep in mind, I did these moves when I was living in Austin, Texas, and either moving throughout the city of Austin, Texas, or to the immediate surrounding cities, because I lived in Round Rock when I was there as well, and then when I moved my stuff from Austin, Texas, back home to Dallas, Texas. So let's get into it. The first one is going to be a do-it-yourself move, also referred to as self-moving, and the title makes it pretty self-explanatory. This is where you do everything yourself. So you're packing up your apartment, you're renting the truck, you're loading the truck, you're unloading the truck. So baby, this whole move is on you and your back. And while this may be the most affordable option, it may also be the most time consuming, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get into how I was able to make this a more budget friendly option. So the few ways that I've done this is, say you're moving within a city or just the next city over. You can rent a U-Haul, and it's very similar if you're familiar with the whole concept of renting the U-Haul at Home Depot, where you go, you get the U-Haul, the first 75 minutes is like $29, and then after that they charge you like a flat rate accordingly for how long you keep the truck. You can also rent the truck for the day, and the only thing that you have to make sure that you do is whatever level you pick it up on regarding gas, you have to make sure that you return it at that gas level. And then the other thing is, they're going to ask you about insurance. Now, what a lot of people don't know is, and they end up taking out the insurance with the company, which can be significantly more expensive, is you can go through your own insurance company depending on what kind of policy that you carry. So be sure to call your insurance company before you sign up for the insurance through U-Haul to figure out what kind of coverage that you have, because when I've done these moves in the past, my insurance has always been able to cover me. Now, let's say that you're not moving within the city or just the next city over. Let's say that you're moving from, you know, Austin to Dallas, or somewhere that's like significantly more miles. So, and you're doing like a one-way trip, and you know you're gonna need that truck in one city, and you're gonna drop it off in the next city. Now, that's when you know you're gonna need the truck for a day or a few days, depending on what it is you're trying to do. And this is how I've been able to get discounted rates on moving trucks doing that. Now, you're gonna have to have a lot of patience to do it this way, but you call the different moving companies. So let's say you call U-Haul, you call Penske, you call Budget, you call Enterprise, and you call and you give them all the information that is, you know, relevant for your move. So for me, for example, it would have been moving from Austin to Dallas, a one-way trip because I won't be returning it back to the same city. You know, make sure it comes with the unlimited mileage. Once again, you may or may not need that insurance, because you should be checking with your insurance company to see if they will cover you, and you give them all of that information. Now, they're gonna quote you They're going to give you a quote for a truck. And 9 times out of 10, going back, because I kind of skipped, it's gonna be when you rent, because you can rent that U-Haul from like Home Depot, you can rent that U-Haul from U-Haul themselves, and it's probably gonna be that 12-foot box truck rental. Keep in mind though, depending on the size of the rental truck that you get, some of the smaller ones, and I can't remember off the top of my head if the 12-foot truck is one, they do not come with the ramp that lets down for you to roll things up. So make sure if that's something that you know that you need, you're double checking that. And that is why I bring this up, because when you go to make your reservation for a U-Haul, a Penske, or a Budget, and you're calling around and you're getting quotes, you're gonna want to keep that in mind. Yes, some of the smaller trucks will be more affordable, but if you know that you're going to need a ramp, some of those smaller trucks do not have the ramp that lets down, which means you're going to be having to lift heavier items up instead of being able to roll them up that ramp. But anywho, that was just like a sidebar. So let's say you call U-Haul first and they give you your quote. You're gonna go ahead and lock that in, because 9 times out of 10, all they're gonna do is need to put a name down on the reservation, and they're gonna hold that for you. And they may or may not ask for your credit card, but they're not gonna charge you. It's simply to hold the reservation, and you're gonna wanna go ahead and do that. So as soon as you get off the phone with them, you're gonna call Penske, Budget, Enterprise, whoever it is that you choose, and do the same thing with them. Now let's say that they quote you around the same price, or they quote you a little higher than say U-Haul did. You're gonna let them know that. You're gonna say, hey, wait a minute, for the same thing, this is what U-Haul quoted me for. Now they may or may not play ball. They may go, you know what, let me check my system and see what other kind of discounts I can give you, and then they'll go ahead and either say this is the best we could do, or they'll go ahead and give you a cheaper price. If they say that that's all that they can do, okay, fine. Then you already have a reservation booked with U-Haul, and then you call the next company. If they say that they can get it a little bit cheaper for you, go ahead, lock in with them. So you're gonna go ahead, let them hold the reservation for you, because 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna charge your card. I've never been like charged. They've only asked for my credit card information or debit card information to hold the reservation, but I have not been charged. Then you're gonna call the first company that you called back, and you're gonna let them know, hey, I want to cancel my reservation, and they're going to ask you why. And when they ask you why, you go ahead and you tell them, I was able to find a cheaper price with your competitor, this is what they're willing to do it for. And then they may say, well, we can't do it for any cheaper than that, we'll go ahead and cancel it. But in my experience, they don't want to lose that business, so they're gonna try to come down a little bit. So then they come down. And I'm gonna tell you, like back when I was in college and I had a lot of money, I literally would just keep doing this until I got a price that was like, okay, this is within my budget, but it does take a lot of time and a lot of effort. So, you know, what is your time worth to you? As a poor college student, I had nothing but time. So I was willing to give that a go. The other thing, be sure to look online for coupons, because a lot of companies like Budget especially, I've been able to save a significant amount of money, anywhere from 20 to 35%, just by going to Google and putting Budget truck rental coupon or Budget coupon and seeing what pops up. They almost always have one. So, you know, go ahead and do that and look into that way. And once you've kind of figured out your whole truck situation, really that's the only expense that you have. And if you're able to use your insurance, that cuts down the price a little bit. And then, like I said, all you have to do is make sure you return that truck at the gas level in which they gave it to you. And that's it. That's the only moving expenses that you'll have if you do a DIY or a self move. The number 2 option is hiring movers, and I need y'all to come a little closer and pay attention, because when I tell you I made the ultimate no-no, like I got taken advantage of so bad one time. It's one of those moments where I wish I could like go back and do it all over again, because I messed up so badly. So I hired a moving company once, and I'll start with the great experience. They were fully licensed, bonded. They did an incredible job. Now, this option has always been, in my experience, the most expensive option, but it also just takes a lot off your plate. Now, I have never done like a full service move, so with this, I still had to pack my stuff. But once I packed my stuff, the movers came in and they took down like my bed. They would wrap furniture that you had, loaded and unloaded the truck, and then once you got to the new location, they would set that up for you. So, some of the things you want to look for, and I'm going to share this before I get into the incredibly bad experience I had when I hired this other company. You want to make sure that you're hiring a reputable company. Listen to me. You want to make sure you're hiring a company that is reputable. Okay, so what do I mean by that? You want to make sure that the moving company that you hired is licensed and bonded. Why? Because say they damage any of your stuff, they break anything, just if any disaster happens, your things are covered. Now, it's depending on the contract that you sign, you won't get like full value for your things, but at least you know, there's some kind of policy put in place to cover you for losses if something like that happens. So some of the other ways you can check to see if a company is reputable is checking the Google reviews. See what other people are saying about the company that you are wanting to do business with. 2, go to the Better Business Bureau's website. See if they're accredited with the Better Business Bureau. And if they're not accredited, even if they're not accredited, you can still type their name in and people can leave kind of like reviews for an unaccredited business so you can see what people's experiences have been in the past. So that's another way to check. You can go to Yelp, see what people have said on Yelp. And the other thing that you can do is go to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's website, and that's FMCSA, and I'll put the link down below. I'll put all of this information down below, and check for the company's US dot number. And that's another way to verify a business. And you want to do that because getting into a miserable experience that I had with the company, I doubt that this business was licensed and bonded. They were not accredited with the Better Business Bureau. This was like when I was super young. I didn't have a lot of money. I actually found like a Groupon deal. I know y'all are probably like, girl, now what did you think you was gonna get finding movers on Groupon? But this was back when like Groupon was new. So like a lot of businesses were putting themselves on there, so it wasn't like wild to me to see things like that, especially for like newer businesses. It was just like a good way to get the name of your business out there and to get people coming in. And they had really good reviews on Groupon. Now I don't know what their reviews were looking like in other places because I didn't even think to check, or I didn't even know to check, let's be honest. So when I hired this moving company, it was like super cheap. That should have been my first red flag, but like I said, I was young, dumb, I didn't know any better. They kept trying to move the date and like move the time, which at the time I was working from 9 till 6 p.m. So like moving around the time just like wasn't gonna work for me because I needed to be out of my apartment by a certain day. So make a long story way short, they came, they packed my apartment up, and at that time I was moving from an apartment and I was putting my stuff in storage. So when they came and they moved me out of my apartment, they moved my stuff inside of a storage facility. Now y'all, I didn't know no better. I went, followed them to the storage facility, stayed, they unpacked all my stuff. I locked up the storage facility and I was like, thank you so much. Only to realize months later when I went to go get my stuff out of storage, baby, they had knocked your girl over the head. I went to unpack my stuff and there was so many things missing. My sound bar and subwoofer were missing. I had like this Coach satchel that was missing. There were just like so many electronics missing, and like name brand like designer items that I had that were just gone. So this is my pro tip to you. Anytime you hire movers to move your stuff and it's their truck, make sure you check the back of that truck before they leave to make sure none of your items were left inside. I didn't know to do that. So they got away with a lot of my stuff, and when I tried calling months later to say, hey, basically the person who I spoke to who was either the manager or the owner was like, girl, this is months later, like how can you prove it? Which, come to find out, like 2 years later, the company ended up being shut down. I think like a lawsuit was filed against them, and a lawyer ended up contacting me, asking me had they moved me and what my experience was with them, because they were going to try to sue them to like recoup money because I wasn't the only person that had a bad experience. So this is why checking places like the Better Business Bureau, checking for the dot number, looking at Google reviews is just like really important. And even if you just so happen to get a company that has stellar reviews, just be sure to check the back of that truck before you let them drive off with your things, because it could just have been at a very avoidable situation had I done that. And this is just to show you that, you know, even if you hire a moving company, that does not mean that things do not come without a headache. You really have to do your due diligence, and even then, sometimes you might still end up just having a not so good experience. But just make sure you're do your research. And anywho, moving on to number 3. Now, this has been my favorite option here of late, where you rent a moving truck, say from U-Haul, and then you hire local movers. I'm going to repeat that. You rent the moving truck and then you hire local movers. This has been an amazing option, and the last 2 times that I've needed something moved, this is the option that I've gone. So what you'll do is very similar to if you're doing like a self move or a DIY move, is you'll go to, in this case, I've only ever just contacted U-Haul because I've only needed it for the day for a few hours. I'm imagining you could also do this with Home Depot, and not even imagining, like you could do this like at a local Home Depot, as long as they had like a box truck that was big enough for you to be able to like get all your stuff in, because you don't want to rent like a pickup truck, which is what they normally have if you're moving a lot of stuff, because then that's just going to complicate the process. But in this instance, I contacted U-Haul, let them know what I needed. So, you know, I probably need the truck for like 4 or 5 hours. How much will that be? You go the morning of the move and you pick up the truck, and then your movers meet you at the location where you're moving from, and then they'll drive over to the location that you're moving to. And what they do is they load the truck up for you, they unload the truck for you, but they will not drive the truck. And a lot of times these are individuals who are trying to build up their company and may not necessarily have the proper insurances and bonding and stuff like that. So until they get to that point, they'll move your stuff and like pack it up for you, but they don't have their own truck. So the way that I've been able to find this, and I will put this down in the comments, is I go to U-Haul's website. U-Haul has this all internally to their website, and it's literally local moving help is what I googled, and it takes me directly, but I'll put the link down below. Now, the information that you're going to put in, you're going to put in the loading address, you're going to put in the date that you need to move, an approximate start time, and then you're going to need to put in the unloading address and the date of all of that too. And once you put find moving help, it's going to give you a list of local movers. And the price can range, I've seen it as low as like $70 per hour up to like $300 per hour. And what you're going to have to do is just go through all of them, see what people have said, how many stars they have, see what the reviews say, and you can find your movers that way. And what I love about that is like you kind of get to dictate, one, you're going to know how much the truck costs because they're going to let you know. And then two, you can kind of decide based on, you know, how much you're willing to spend, how much the movers will cost. Now, the movers that I found through here, I think they ended up being, at the time, it was like $85 or $90 an hour, something like that. But it wasn't anything crazy. And when I tell you they did a phenomenal job, I ended up hiring them for one job when we moved out of our apartment into our house. But then when we drove up a moving truck from Texas with a bunch of my stuff in it, I ended up calling them back and being like, hey, can y'all, you know, come unload a truck for me again? And once again, they were like super professional. So I say that to say that like the highest price may not always equate the best service, because they definitely weren't the highest ones listed in there. And like I said, they did a phenomenal job. Now, while this option may not be more affordable than doing it yourself, for me it's a nice middle road to hiring a moving company, which can sometimes be super expensive, versus just doing it this route. For me, it's not that big of a lift to go and pick up a truck and then to bring it back. So if it's saving me hundreds of dollars to do it, I just think, why not? So I highly recommend this option. I think that, yeah, I think that it's a really good option. Now, what I have never done, I've never done where I've hired movers for full service, but I've heard phenomenal things about that too. I've had friends that have done that. And what I mean by full service is where they come in and do everything for you. They pack up your whole entire apartment, load the truck, they unload the truck, and then they unpack all of your stuff once it gets to the location. I've never done that just because it's not in my budget, but I've had friends that have had an amazing experience doing that with some companies. So if that's something that you're into, once again, just do your due diligence, similar to if you were just hiring a moving company to not do full service, but just like move you, to make sure that you're getting a reputable company. Now, I've kind of touched on this already, but my favorite is where you rent the truck and you hire local movers. My least favorite at this point at my big old age is doing it yourself. And the most affordable, of course, is doing the DIY self-move option. But it's also like, how much is your time worth to you? So that's something to think about too. Yeah, I think that that's all that I have, and I hope that this video has been super helpful. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments, and I'll just be sure to include all the links below in the caption that'll be helpful for you, including the links to my long haul videos. And I made all the mistakes so you don't have to, so happy moving. Bye.